This is a $100,000 server that can store 1.2 billion web pages and holds up to 60 hard drives. And this is a $1 microcontroller, and it can run a tiny little web server with its little 2 megabytes of built-in storage. This server uses 2 million times more power, but it stores 600 million times more files. And thanks to this new desk from FlexiSpot, I can finally work on all my servers again. More on that in a bit. In this video, I'm going to compare this $100,000 server to this monster workstation server, to this cheap mini PC you can run as a home server, and this tiny microcontroller that runs a mini web server. And I know what you're thinking. That? A server? I mean, yes, it's not a server in the traditional sense, but what is a server? Well, Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines it as a computer that provides services to other computers. And if I use a special language called MicroPython, I can set this little guy up to serve web pages to other computers on my network. So yes, it's a server. And it only uses like 100 milliwatts of power, so you don't need a giant rack like this to power it and keep it cool. But this rack is pretty useful for the other servers. Subscribe and I'll tell you more about it soon. But it's easy to turn this little thing into a web server. Here's a tiny bit of code that tells me the current temperature using a thermometer built right into the $1 chip on here. But that's not all that useful. I mean, you couldn't put more than a few pictures on here before it's out of space. And it'd be painful to have everyone program their own web servers like this. What we need is something a little bigger. Bigger, like this desk from this video's sponsor, FlexiSpot. This E7Q is totally overkill for this little microcontroller, but it's perfect for this massive server chassis. Its 4 legs each have their own motors for the ultimate stability, even supporting up to 660 pounds. That's a lot of server hardware. I mean, I'm less than 200 pounds and it has zero issue raising me up all the way to full extension. And it doesn't even wobble. I can't say that about my old desk at home. But after all that work lifting these servers and carrying petabytes of hard drives back and forth, I need to sit down and relax. And this old chair I brought from home just isn't cutting it. It's torn up and it doesn't even have armrests. Luckily, FlexiSpot has the perfect desk chair for me too. After destroying my back lifting these servers, at least their new C7 chair can help me sit with the proper form. Like literally, the first time I sat in the chair, I actually fell asleep. It's that comfortable. I mean, I had just spent the last hour building the desk and the chair, so I guess I was a little tired, but still. To put together the desk, I actually had my dad come and help at a few points. The thing is so sturdy, partly because it also weighs a lot, with 4 legs and 4 motors. But the chair was easy enough for me to put together on my own. And it has what FlexiSpot calls a self-adaptive dynamic system. And, well, I'll just demonstrate. It basically conforms to your body as you move around. And if you want, you can lock that off. In fact, pretty much every part of this chair is adjustable, from the headrest to even what they call these 4D armrests. Whether you're 5'4" or 6'2" and up to 300 pounds, this chair will work for you. And if you don't like what you see here, they also have a foam version available and some other chairs for other price ranges, like the C6 and the C3. Their notes say the C7 is best for freelancers, finance pros, and IT employees, or, well, I guess pretty much anybody who sits for long periods of time. I know I do. But use my code redshirtjeff for 30 bucks off, and there are links for the desk and the chair down below. They have a 30-day free return policy and a nice long warranty, so try one out for 2024. Now, technically this little Raspberry Pi is $6 all in, but the chip that powers this board is still just $1. But if you have a bit more to spend, for about $100, you can get a used mini PC like this one I bought on eBay. It's a Lenovo M710Q, and it has a Core i7 CPU, an SSD, and upgradable RAM. I've spotted these things all over the place. Like last year when I was stuck in the hospital after surgery, one of them was strapped to the TV running Windows for their hospital infotainment system. This is the 3rd time this has happened today. So let's see what kind of computer's back here. So we got one of those little thin client PCs. And it just keeps locking up. And I see them all the time at reception desks or in businesses where a portable laptop isn't really useful. But this thing is a whole computer, and most of these can be upgraded so they can have enough RAM and storage to make a fine little server. So people in the home lab community have started buying up these things and stashing them in their closets or even in racks in tiny little server clusters. You can run a lot on them. You could automate your home using Home Assistant, you can upgrade your cheap router to something that can take on 10 gigabits, or you can even go full radal and build yourself a Kubernetes cluster full of them.
Yeah? Got a problem with that?
Well, I mean, he used Nooks, so they're a little more expensive than this, but it's the same idea. These aren't the fastest servers in town, and they also use like 10 to 40 watts of power, so they're not for everyone. But it's better for one of these things to wind up reused as a home server for a few years instead of going into a landfill. But at 10,000, now we're getting into exotic territory. This thing has 128 CPU cores on a monster chip. It also has almost half a terabyte of RAM and not one, but 2 video cards. These kind of servers are used for a lot of different things. This particular server is actually a workstation. Workstations are basically server-grade desktop computers. Developers and designers use these when they need something more reliable or powerful than the piddly desktop PCs you buy from mail order catalogs. And this one is called the Ampere Ultra Developer Platform, and it was sent to me by the company AdLink. Now, the list price is a lot less than 10 grand, but I've done a lot of upgrades on this machine. Even after all that, it's still really quiet and pretty energy efficient. Modern servers can use water cooling and better designed CPUs to do the same work old processors did using the same or even less energy. And that means people who use these systems can get more done in less time using less power. This computer is what the new Mac Pro wishes it could be. It uses the same CPU architecture Apple does, but you can build it just like a normal desktop PC. So I put in 2 Pro video cards that I can use to compress streaming video or process AI workloads. And a professional video card like this one on the bottom is a lot different than the ones you find in even the highest end gaming PCs. It's pretty much the same GPU, but this one in particular has 48 gigabytes of VRAM. That means you can load in way more data or even train AI models on it. That doesn't mean you couldn't game on it too, it's not meant for that. It's more likely you'd be making games on the machine like this. And those 128 CPU cores aren't super fast individually, but they can handle some things like serving up websites way more efficiently than faster desktop cores. But this thing's just $10,000. We're moving up. No, literally, to the cloud. This is the kind of server that runs that amorphous cloud thingy that was all the rage before ChatGPT and AI took over. In fact, for the kinds of insane work they do in the cloud, this kind of server isn't even that expensive. This server is meant for storage, and yes, you can configure one of these boxes to go right up to $100,000 per unit. Of course, that's with support contracts and all the bells and whistles. Did I get the full $100,000 version? Not a chance. With redshirtjeff running around, insurance would never cover that. But I did completely deck this thing out with 60 hard drives, and then I yanked out the massive server motherboard and replaced it with a Raspberry Pi. So yeah, I mean, you probably aren't going to find too many servers like the one I built in a cloud, but you will find servers like these with dozens of CPU cores, hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, and petabytes of hard drives. And I'm glad I finally got this FlexiSpot desk because I finally have room now to work on this one. And in this new studio, I need a storage server, so, well, yeah, I'm not going to say I need a full petabyte. It'd just be a massive waste of electricity for me to run this server with a petabyte here 24/7. But there are a lot of businesses that do need petabytes of storage and 100 gigabit networking. And they have the budget for these things. In fact, they usually buy servers under contracts in the millions of dollars. I mean, if you're like Google, Amazon, or Facebook, you're probably designing your own servers, and you can't really put a price on that. But you can put a price on an Oxide server, which is like this rack, but like not empty. They pre-build an entire mini cloud in a rack they ship to you, starting at like $500,000. So yeah, there's definitely a high ceiling above a $100,000 server too. And I haven't even mentioned AI clusters. Each of these servers has 8 $50,000 GPUs and costs a few $100,000 easy. A rack full of these could burn 100 kilowatts of power all day long. So think about that next time you ask ChatGPT to comment on a Jeff Geerling video. You might have just used more power than an entire house, at least momentarily. What am I going to do with this thing? And where did this rack come from? Subscribe to find out. My next moving vlog will reveal all that and more. Thank you so much to all my patrons and sponsors for keeping this channel going through 2023. Also thanks to FlexiSpot, who sent over this rock-solid E7Q desk that can hold over 600 pounds of server hardware, and for sending the most comfortable chair in the office, the C7, with a 10-year warranty to boot. Make sure you use promo code redshirtjeff using the link below if you want to buy your own, and until next year, I'm Jeff Geerling.